Have you ever wondered how pro runners can run so much and yet stay injury-free? Well, here's a little secret. It's in their shoes. Meet ENERTOR, the revolutionary running insole that absorbs 51% of the force of each foot strike. Designed for and with elite runners, ENERTORs not only protect you from injury, but also boost your energy return, helping you run faster for longer, pain-free.
With so many big names behind them, including Usain Bolt, I was keen to try them. If I'm being honest, I didn't think insoles were for me. I didn't think I needed them, but when I tried them, I was shocked because you really feel that energy return in every foot strike. It makes me feel really bouncy when I run, especially when my legs are feeling tired. Want to experience the ENERTOR difference? Try them out risk-free on their website with their 60-day money-back guarantee. And for our lucky listeners, you can use the code 5mileseasy at checkout for 15% off your order.
Unlock your running potential with ENERTOR insoles today. First of all, the cardboard beds, let's start there. You know what, I really don't know what the fuss is all about with the cardboard beds. I mean, I basically had to perform on the least sleep I've had for the entire training block. There was a big group, she just kind of caught my leg and I really stumbled, and that was when I just got this like really bad pain and I was like, oh, this is not good. It wasn't just the pain, I was like, I can't move it, and I literally like couldn't put any weight through it. It was bizarre. I was like, how have I just run 42 kilometers and then there was literally nothing I could do to like step on my leg? Welcome back to 5 Miles Easy. We're so happy to be back doing the pod after a few weeks break, so thank you for bearing with us, but we promise there is lots of good stuff to come.
Yes, so today we've got a very special episode because we're going to get all the inside scoop on the Olympics. Yes, Rose is now an Olympian, so I can't wait to hear everything from what it was like in the village, the prep, and of course the race itself. It's definitely been a difficult few weeks, but that was no doubt shared with some incredible lifelong memories too. But this is all part of the running journey.
Yes, Steph, you're so right. It's seemed like a whole chapter in itself. So many highs, obviously some pretty catastrophic lows, which I'm sure we will get onto. But I mean, from the experience, there were also so many highlights and just incredible moments that, I mean, just felt so surreal. And I'll definitely look back on really, really happily. And yes, it is just all part of the journey. Unfortunately, injuries are part of it too, as all runners will know, and dealing with it is, it's another challenge. But anyway, shall we start with kind of the Olympic experience and the gossip on the village?
Yes, please, because there's just so much that I want to know about the whole Olympic experience. And in the village, you know, everyone's talking about the cardboard beds, the food, you know, what stuff you get for free. Everyone's like, oh, we get a free phone. Like, did you get a phone? I don't know. I'd love to hear it all. So just take it away.
First of all, the cardboard beds, let's start there. You know what? I really don't know what the fuss is all about with the cardboard beds, because it's literally just a bed frame and they were perfectly fine. I mean, granted, a bit of a bizarre concept, but all in the name of being eco, which is great. And yeah, the cardboard bit was not the issue. However, I have to say, the lack of sleep in the village was really challenging. And it's just something that you never really think about going into the Olympics. I mean, normally I'm so kind of hot on my sleep and I also really need my sleep. But the rooms were, first of all, really hot. So that was the first issue. And then you're just sharing a room with someone that obviously you don't normally share with. And so I slept so badly when I was in the village. I mean, it was also, my window was above where one of the big screens was. So every night it was so noisy and I was just couldn't get to sleep. And then, I mean, this is no reflection on my roommate, who was brilliant and very normal and didn't wake me up or anything. But you know, when there's someone else in the room, you're always kind of a bit on guard, so I kept waking up in the night.
This really surprises me though, because you'd feel like in the village where you've got a bunch of professional athletes, the best athletes in the world, preparing for kind of the biggest performance of their life. It really surprises me that, number one, you had a screen outside your window. Like, you know, sleep is such an important part of it that, I don't know, some of those things are just quite surprising that they wouldn't prioritise it.
I'm really surprised about it too, because as you see, sleep is such a key component. And I mean, I basically had to perform on the least sleep I've had for the entire training block, which is just bizarre when you think about it. And normally I do really try and prioritise it. I mean, the night before the race, like you obviously don't get good sleep, and we'd be up early. But the days leading up to that, I had kind of 6 hours sleep a night, which for me is really not enough. So I think that was the most challenging bit of the whole village experience. But the cardboard beds themselves were absolutely fine. And then as for that, I have to say okay, so that was the negative bit of the village. The rest of it was really cool. I mean, it is literally a large village. You have gyms there, like multiple gyms, huge dining halls, you have shops, you have like everything. It is literally this bubble. No one who's not an athlete or accredited can come into the village. So it is literally pretty much just the athletes. And you're just surrounded by, the world's best in their sport, which is so cool. And it's just it is just such an insight into such different worlds. You obviously got all different nations there, and you stay with your nation. So there will be these big blocks, and we had, GB, and we were next to China and Uzbekistan, I think. And then within our house, there are all the different sports. But it was so cool learning about how different people train. And I think that for me was actually one of the highlights. There was one evening I went into the dining hall, and it was the first day I got there, and I kind of forgot that everyone wasn't athletics. So I just sat down with some people who were in GB kit, like assuming I could talk to them about athletics. And they were just like, you've just sat down with the entire hockey team. But they were so nice, and we actually made really good friends, and one of the girls lives in Putney, so we just got on really well. But it's so funny, it's just such a mix of people there.
Yeah, because I think from a spectator point of view, watching the Olympics is so cool, because you're suddenly, for me anyway, I'm suddenly obsessed with every sport. I'm like, I want to learn how to do that sport. I find it so fascinating. So then from your perspective, to get to actually talk to the athletes and get to learn about their sports is really, really cool. Was there anyone that you saw there that you were starstruck by?
So many people. I got the lift with Andy Murray. Obviously, like Dina was there, who I was on a team with before, so I kind of knew her and chatted to her. Just so many people. You're literally like surrounded by, you just walk down and, the world's best athletes are just there. It's so cool. So many starstruck moments. I think one of, not starstruck, but absolutely baffled, I stood next to a girl in the dining room queue who was 7'3". Needless to say, she was a basketballer, but that was a just bizarre moment. I've never felt so short in my life.
It would have been more interesting seeing me next to her, imagine.
Oh my God. I think you'd have come up to her hip. Honestly, this girl was just so tall.
But that's so cool as well, because like you say, there's just people that are the best in their own sport, but with that comes so many different types of people as well. It's so fascinating.
So many different body types, just ways of training, kind of ways of doing things. Absolutely. It is all so different, such a mix of people.
And what was the atmosphere like? So I guess, in the GB house, when someone came back and they'd won a medal, was it kind of a big celebration with everyone, or how did that work?
Yeah, definitely. The atmosphere, it was so cool, and there were lots of celebrations. I think you're surrounded by, and this was kind of a really cool thing to be part of, but also quite exhausting by the end of it. You're surrounded by everyone who's got their pre-race nerves and going through that, and then competing, and then like celebrating or disappointment, and then people are going through that in multiple rounds often, so that is the entire atmosphere all the time, day in, day out. And I was only in the village for a few days, and kind of by the end of it I was like, wow, this is quite full on, but oh my gosh, I don't know how people did it who were there for the entire time. It's awesome, but it is really full on, and just the kind of energy levels are so high. But yeah, when people did really well, it was so cool. And I got to watch some friends who did really well. Georgia, who's obviously been on the pod, she had an incredible race. And yeah, just seeing that like firsthand was really cool. There were so many other performances that were just awesome after kind of knowing the athletes going into it, and them being friends, to watch that, the dreams come true, was awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. And what about, did you learn anything from anyone's kind of prep or how the way they did things? Was it helpful to be around that, to be kind of soak up how other people train?
To some extent, I think by that time I kind of got, you got your plan going in, and everyone's prep is different. So I think it was almost not getting sucked into it and not letting it affect how you do things, because just because someone else does something, as we know, it doesn't mean it works for you. And I think that's the thing I had to keep in mind, actually, was don't get sucked into it. Don't start trying new things before race day and doing things a different way.
Yeah, that's such a good message. And you got to go to the closing ceremony as well?
I made it to the closing ceremony. It was, I'm sure we'll come on to it in a bit, but yeah, I nearly missed the closing ceremony because we'll come on to the explanation, but I had to go for a scan after my race. And so I got out of the scan and literally everyone was lining up, like, ready to go. And I saw one of my friends in the crowd and I was like, oh, I really want to go. And he was like, I think if you like get a move on, you can make it. And so I was on crutches and they'd stopped all the shuttles in the village, but we still had the bikes, and it was basically like downhill to the GB house. So I managed to get on a bike with my crutches, my legs sticking out, and like roll down the hill to the GB house, get changed quickly, and then get back. And I just about made it. I mean, I was sitting on the edge for most of it on the stairs, but it was so cool to see it. I'm very happy I made it.
In your very fancy shirt.
Yes, the Hawaiian shirts, which no one really understood, but it looked quite cool.
That all just sounds so incredible, and it's so cool that we get an insight into that because so few people experience it. So we are very lucky. So as you mentioned, we are going to get into a bit more about why you're currently on crutches. I know I keep seeing you popping up on all the different news channels. I'm like, oh, there's Rose again. So if anyone else has seen you, they'll know you are on crutches and you're injured. So let's kind of go back a few weeks so training was going really well for you, and then you mentioned you had a little bit of tightness in your hip. What was going on then?
Yeah, this is the most frustrating thing because training was going so well. I'd done a really good block out in Font Romeu and all my sessions were going really well. I'd done all the work, done the hill prep, and everything was just looking like so good. And I suppose it's always the way, because at the top end you're always kind of playing with that line, and you've got to push your body, and you're at your fittest just before you get injured. And maybe that was a sign that it was going so well. So it was going really well until I got back from Font Romeu and I just got a bit of tightness in my hip. I mean, I thought it was just from travelling originally, and then it just didn't really settle. So I spoke to my physio, and the conclusion was it was a bit of inflammation in my hip flexor, probably from doing a bit more hill training than I'm used to. And we thought, okay, fine, it will settle down. I was going into the taper anyway at this stage, and so I really wasn't no one was worried about it. We thought, right, take a few anti-inflammatories, going to have a few easy weeks and it will clear up. And then like a week later, it hadn't really got that much better. But I was still running. I couldn't really do much fast stuff because it actually didn't feel too bad, but I just didn't want to aggravate it more. But at this stage, we were like, well, yeah, okay, maybe I'm missing a bit of confidence building work just going into the race, but I wasn't really losing any fitness because at that stage you don't gain anything. So I was actually feeling pretty good going into the kind of days leading up to the Olympics, and I went out to Strasbourg where I had a holding camp, felt pretty good going into that, and just had to really trust in my training. And I thought, okay, well, I've done the work, I can just rest the hip up and it's going to be fine. But because I also wasn't really testing it, I kind of didn't know what it was going to be like, apart from the fact that it felt okay just running easy. So I thought, well, that's a good confidence boost. But yeah, I mean, at that stage I couldn't really do much to test it over a longer period anyway.
Did you feel worried at all? You said, you didn't really do anything to kind of keep your confidence high, and nor had you tested it. So how did you feel at that stage, not really knowing? Like, how did you deal with that?
Well, I felt fine because we thought we did know, and it was, yes, I would have loved to have had my tune-up sessions in the week leading up to it, but I really just did take confidence in the training that I'd done. And it's not ideal, but I really wasn't too concerned about it at all. And I knew that those sessions were only for my own confidence, so that's kind of in my control, and I just have to not put too much weight on it. So I did genuinely think going into the race that my hip would be all right, and I was worried that I would feel it in the latter stages, and that was kind of what I discussed with my team. We knew that the downhills in particular were likely to inflame it a bit, but I knew in that last 10k I was like, okay, I might lose a % or two, but if I can have a good race up until then you can get through it, and it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I genuinely, and it's in the Olympics, you're not going for a time as such, so I wasn't too worried about a quick start, or just, to be honest, I didn't really think too much. You can't really think too negatively about it. It is what it is, and I thought I still had a good chance of performing really well, so I didn't kind of worry about it too much. And then in the few days leading up to the race, my taper was the same as I normally do, so that kind of actually gave me confidence again, and I lined up feeling pretty good.
And if anything, you're just super fresh as well, so
there was no risk of being overtrained, that's for sure.
So you obviously, you went into, you're like, right, definitely going to start the race. Hopefully, it doesn't flare up too much, and maybe towards the end. Once you started the race, how far did you get into it before you kind of knew something wasn't quite right?
It was only about 3 or 4k. And at that stage, I was like, it started being sore. And I thought, okay, maybe it's just warming up. It's a faster pace than I'd been running at, because I'd just been easy running that week. Maybe it just needs a bit of time to warm up. So when it first started hurting, I was like, oh, this is not great, but I didn't actually worry too much about it. But basically, from that point onwards, it just didn't get better. It got quite a lot worse. And I think it was about 10k that I was like, this is really not feeling good. And there was one point when a girl just tripped me a bit. And there was a big group. She just kind of caught my leg, and I really stumbled. And that was when I just got this like really bad pain. And I was like, oh, this is not good. I knew at that point it was going to be a pretty painful day out. I kind of just from that point onwards like felt it slipping away from me. And it's so hard when I was on the pack for quite a while, but it's so hard when you start losing the pack and there's just like nothing you can do about it. And what's the most frustrating is, like, obviously aerobically I was fine. It didn't go off. The race didn't go off quickly. So aerobically I was completely fine, but I just could not get my leg to move quicker. And I tried so many different tactics. I tried so much visualization and just not thinking about it and then thinking about it. And there was just nothing I could do.
It's time to thank our sponsor for this episode, VELOFORTE.
Now, as our listeners will know by now, we are both big fans of using the VELOFORTE products in our training. And I have to say, Steph, I had a really hard session today. And all I could think about in those last couple of reps was having a malto shake at the end. The cold cinnamon and vanilla shake at the end of a hard session just hits differently.
Oh, it tastes so good, doesn't it? I've been absolutely loving the energy chews. They're a great alternative to gels, and I've been using them on those longer runs, especially in my training for 2 Oceans. They came in very handy and they're so delicious. I love the apple and cinnamon flavour.
And the best bit is, because VELOFORTE uses only real food ingredients and nothing artificial, you can trust what you're putting in your body, and it digests so much better to synthetic alternatives.
And you can understand every ingredient on the back, which is not always the case with these types of products.
Thanks to VELOFORTE for supporting this podcast. And if you would like 30% off the VELOFORTE products, head to veloforte.com and use the code 5miles at checkout.
Yeah, so I was going to ask kind of where did your mind go? Because obviously you finished. I mean, you're in an incredible amount of pain that I don't know how you did it. So whatever you were doing inside your head worked because, so I was out there and I was running around with Caitlin, who's your physio, and we obviously knew something was up just by the way you were running. And at one point, I think we were at 34k, and by this point the whole race was really spread out, and obviously you were running a lot slower than you would have been, and we just didn't know. We were like, oh, you know what, she might have stopped because like that would be very understandable. And then suddenly Charlie comes up to us and he's like, she's coming, because I mean, you might want to talk about this as well. He was pretty much next to you all the way on the bike. And we were like, oh my gosh, she's doing it. She's going to finish. And it was actually really emotional from our point of view, just watching it, because even though like we knew how much pain you must be going through, and just to think, God, she's really like pushed through that mental barrier to make sure she finishes the Olympic marathon. It's just very cool.
I mean, honestly, it was a real roller coaster. So many things went through my mind. There were so many just mental battles, but there are a few things that kept me going. I think firstly, it's just the amount of work that everyone else had put into it, and it wasn't about what I put into it, because I love training, like I love running, and to be honest, you know, I'd have loved that whatever the result, but it's the fact that so many other people have put so much into that one day, and I just felt like I had to give everything. And I think that's the hardest thing about the whole thing. It's just like I feel like I've let everyone down in not performing the way that we work for, because it was shaping up to be so good. And I think that was kind of the toughest bit that was going through my head. I was like, when I felt the time slipping away from me, I was like, oh no, this can't be happening. Like everyone's put so much into this. But that was also what kept me going, because I still felt like there's something I could do. And yes, like so much of what I wanted and the Olympic dream that I'd thought about for so long was kind of disappearing, but there was still one element of it, and that was just crossing the finish line. And honestly, I just thought about that finish line. I was like, I have to get there. And then there were actually a few times when I stopped and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like it was after the uphills were actually all right. Like the uphills were the most comfortable bit of the whole race, bizarrely, because it just put my hip on a slightly different angle and it hurt a bit less. But the downhills were hell. And I was literally going down like I just had to kind of do a few steps and then walk a bit and just like let the pain settle and then do a few more steps. And I was like, this is just, I don't know if I can like literally last. And knowing that also my leg at some point might just completely like give up. But whenever I stopped, I was just like, could I do 1 more mile? Like, could I even do 500 meters more? And I didn't. At no point did I absolutely know that I couldn't do it. And I don't think I'll be able to live with myself and that feeling of thinking like, could I have done a little bit more? And so every time I stopped, that was what got me started again. And I'd just be like, right, okay, I'm just literally going to see if I can do like 500 meters more. And then I got going and it just kind of carried on. But that was the other thing that I kind of held in my head. But the crowds were incredible as well. Like the support on the course was just insane. And it's kind of, I think, even though I wouldn't say it was an enjoyable experience running that marathon, but one thing that was amazing was just like the energy that you feel from it. And I was actually really able to soak that up because I had to find a way to like make it somewhat enjoyable. And I always think I perform my best when I'm enjoying it and when I'm smiling. And I was like, right, the only way I can do that and can get like some sense of enjoyment and smile is just soak up the energy of the crowds and look at my friends on the course, you know, you guys supporting. As you said, Charlie was there, like so much of it. And that was actually really special, just to like share so much of the race with the people closest to me. And that did also like keep smiling. And it was, that part of it was really enjoyable. I absolutely loved it. And it was really special. And I think, yeah, those things combined just kept me kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And I just couldn't give up. I think that was the thing, like I just couldn't give up on like the one slither of my dream that still stayed there, and that was just doing the Olympic marathon.
Yeah, and that's why you're elite at this. Like that's a very much an Olympic mindset, not to give up. And it must be some sense of kind of reassurance that you did finish and you don't kind of have any questions of what if. Because like you said, you know, if you had stopped, you would have wondered, but could I have got to the end? And at least you have that. And you think, you know what, I did everything I could in that moment.
Yeah, 100%. And even though I am now off for a little while, I absolutely don't regret finishing it, and I don't regret pushing through the pain. And I know a lot of people think I'm really stupid doing that, but I have literally no regrets about doing that at all. Because, as you said, at least I can walk away and be like, I did everything I could.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's right to ignore the opinions of those that, you know, aren't closest to you anyway, because it's a very hard thing to understand. You know, there's not many people that are going to be running an Olympic marathon, and absolutely you had to do that in that moment. So yeah, I don't think any regrets. So there's this footage of you crossing the finish line, and obviously, you know, you were in a lot of pain, but you did have the adrenaline kind of carrying you through as well. And in this footage, you kind of come to a stop, and, you know, did all the pain just start rushing through as soon as you stopped?
It's absolutely incredible. This was one of the moments I'm like, it's incredible what your body does. And that was exactly how it happened. I crossed the finish line, and then I was like, just took a few more steps, and then I stopped and was given some water, and I tried to move again. I was like, I literally can't. Like, my leg suddenly was in so much pain, and it wasn't just the pain. I was like, I can't move it. And I literally like couldn't put any weight through it. It was bizarre. I was like, how have I just run 42 kilometers? Obviously, I mean, I was definitely running a bit wonky on it, but I was putting significant weight through it. And then there was literally nothing I could do to like step on my leg. It is just bizarre what your body can get you through. And yeah, I had to have like some really strong painkillers straight after the race because I was just in so much pain.
Oh, they sounded good, those painkillers.
Oh, they were fantastic, honestly. I don't know what I had, but it was great. I have probably about half an hour. I have like no recollection of what happened.
You were sent to another planet.
Literally.
So then, yeah, what happened after the race? Obviously, there must have been the medical team that were quite concerned. What happened next?
The medical team were brilliant, actually. The GB doctor very kindly looked after me, and I did refuse a wheelchair. Not sure why, but I was just like, I'm not getting in a wheelchair in front of the cameras. So I refused the wheelchair. But
that's very Rose Harvey.
It did mean that the poor doctor basically had to carry me. Carry a real sweaty mess to the tent. So yeah, I should probably apologise for that, really. But anyway, we made it, and I was just sat down, given some great painkillers, and some crutches, and I was then taken back to the village to get a scan on my leg, which I was praying. I mean, I think my gut knew it wasn't great, but I was praying it wasn't a fracture, and it turned out to be a stress fracture in my femur. So that was not the best news, but I think I probably knew, to be honest. I wasn't overly surprised.
Yeah, of course, like obviously not what you wanted, but I think, you know, you got to that finish line, you ticked it off, you knew you might have a few weeks of having to recover from it anyway. So what does this diagnosis mean? How long will it take before you're back running?
Thankfully, it should heal perfectly. Apparently there's like a good side to have a fracture on your femur and a bad side to have a fracture, and mine's on the good side, so I'm taking that as a big win.
Well done.
Yeah, I know. At least I did something that I did right. I think it will be a bit of a long haul, about 3 months till I'm back fully training. But before that I can cross train, I can bike, and to be honest, I think obviously it's longer than I want to have off. And I had some good plans for races at the end of the year, which will be not happening. But I don't think a break's the worst thing in the world. I've had quite a busy year, and there's obviously the kind of stress and emotion that goes into the Olympics. And I think a forced break, it's got to be a good thing because it's happening, so I've got to make it a good thing. But yeah, I don't think the timing is actually the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like you say, you're in this situation, so you have to make the best of it and almost see it as a sign, you know, kind of what can I get out of this, and almost, you know, prioritizing things that you wouldn't be doing when you're in a big training block as well. You know, there's lots of other things that you enjoy doing. So yeah, it can be fun.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think that's such a good way to look at it. And it's quite funny, actually. Sophie Rayworth, who of course has been on the pod, she wrote a column about her injury because she's just come back from a fractured ankle. And she asked me for some advice, and my advice was very much that, you know, just enjoy it. Like, enjoy doing the things that you can't do. And don't rush, just make the most of it, because it will fly by, and then you'll be back running and you'll be back to training. And now it's time for me to follow that advice. And she actually followed it so well. And she said, you know what, I actually really enjoyed my break. But she also just has the most amazing mentality of like, nothing will stop me living my life. So the first day after I got back from Paris, I came down on my crutches, which took me about 15 minutes to get downstairs. And then I went to make a coffee. And I got to the coffee machine and I was like, I can't get anywhere. Like, I can't get my coffee even to the sofa. And I was just like, I'm stuck. And I got really upset about it because I was like, oh my God, this is awful. I don't know how I'm going to do this long on crutches. And I just can't, I'm useless. Like, you can't do anything. But anyway, Sophie brought me around her scooter that she scooted round on, which has been a game changer. And her general positive energy as well. I'm just trying to channel that as much as possible. Thinking, right, just focus on what you can do, and where there's a will, there's a way. So I think you just have to get a bit creative with how you do things. So I'm trying to enjoy that challenge and just, do as much as possible whilst crutching around the place. At least my upper body will get some good strength.
Yeah, that scooter looks actually really fun. So what a win. And of course, you are getting married next week.
Yes, so that's the other big challenge, which has actually been a really nice distraction, I have to say, with everything going on. And I think after it happened, I got back and I kind of wanted to just lock myself away and not see anyone and bury my head in the sand about it all. Then the media erupted and kind of meant that was not possible at all and made it all very public, which was a real challenge. But I think having the wedding as like such a just different thing to focus on has really kind of helped me get through that. Now then, whether I'll be on crutches for it is the big question, but I think at least I'll be able to walk down the aisle, so I'm just going to take that and might be dancing on my crutches, but we'll have fun anyway.
See, I think that's important to say, because you said you wanted to bury your head in the sand after it all happened. And I think no matter whether the Olympics went well or not so well or whatever's gone on, it's such a big build up to, you know, a huge event that I think it can be challenging for so many people after it's over, because it's kind of like, oh, what do I do now? And Simone Biles actually tweeted a really interesting tweet where she was saying, can the media stop asking Olympians what's next as soon as they've just finished their event? Because like, let them kind of deal with it, whether it's bad or good, like let them deal with those emotions first rather than feeling like you've got to just jump onto the next thing.
Yeah, 100%. I know a lot of people do really struggle with it, and I've definitely got a sense of that. There is so much energy that goes into it, and I think after I finished, it was obviously I was not celebrating, but I got back and I was like, it's all over. Like, all of that stress and anxiety is all over. And obviously I was like really disappointed and sad about what happened, but there's also kind of a weird mix of like relief and then thinking, okay, well, like, how do I go on from this? And I actually think in some respects my usual like coping mechanism is, right, okay, like, it's happened, fine, move on, and like learn from your mistakes and just move on. And I wasn't like able to do that because like every day I had to talk about it, and every day it was in the media, and so every day I tried to move on, it was like, no, we're back there and we're going over it. And I actually had a chat with my sports psychologist and I was like, it's so hard, like I can't keep doing this every day and just going over, you know, the biggest failure of my career that was so public, and like having to deal with that just day on day on day is quite a lot. But she was like, actually, it's, you know, normally your coping mechanism is probably go out for a run. Actually, it's the first coping mechanism. Go out for a run, make yourself feel better, figure it out, then move on. And it's actually been quite a good challenge, and like I can't do that, so I've got to find a different way to kind of process it and find positives in the situation and learn from it. And I think maybe like thinking about it more and having that time to reflect more is going to be a good thing because I can actually look into the whole experience more and kind of find more learnings to take away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And I think it's an important message too. And of course, it's your career, so it's hugely important, but also, you know, having the perspective as well that it was, you know, such a short part of your career that there's so much else good to come and so many good things happen before it that at the time it can seem like everything, but actually, you know, once you process it and kind of move forward, there's, so many good things to come.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And the one thing I've been reflected on and have been saying is like, well, okay, it was like a pretty catastrophic point in my career, but at the end of the day, you know, I got home and I was like, I've still got the people who love me and everything's still the same, really. Like, I've still got a pretty good life and there's so much else going on that's so enjoyable. There are still so many things to put a smile on my face. I'm like, well, okay, if that's pretty much as bad as it gets, like, I'm still fine. And I think it's actually given me a really nice perspective. And Jen Gregson actually talked about this on her episode as well, when she had her major Achilles injury. And that was, you know, everyone thought it was going to end her career. And then she had her son, and it just gave her this whole perspective of like, okay, there's actually so much else in life that's incredible, and like running is one part of it, but it almost allowed her to be more fearless. Her situation is, I think, a little more extreme, but I've kind of got that sense as well of like, okay, running obviously means so much to me and I want to do really well, and I still have that hunger, and actually a lot more hunger now to like come back and make a really good comeback. But at the same time, like, I know it's just running.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And, you know, we discussed it after you were selected, how, you know, you were kind of worried what people might think if you weren't selected for the Olympics, and then realising those that love you don't love you because whether or not you're selected for the Olympics. And it's the same with this, you know, it's like no one thinks differently who's close to you because it didn't turn out the way that you hoped. You know, like life goes on. Everyone who loves you for being you, not for your performances. So I think, just remembering that is key.
Yeah, definitely. I think perspective is such a good word, and it's definitely one to kind of keep in mind for anyone who's going through injuries, because they are really tough, and that's part of running. There are a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but I think if you can just keep perspective, then it does make it a lot easier.
So what does the road ahead look like for you, you know, once you're back running again? Have you got any goals coming up?
I mean, I'm already planning the goals and I cannot wait to be back running. There are actually lots of positives that come out of this, and I think one that always comes from injury is just like your appreciation for running again. And I mean, there are definitely times in the training block where it's like, oh my God, this is really hard, or I'm not loving it. And then, just being off for a while, it's like all I want to do is, you just get run envy of people running. I see people out jogging. I'm like, I want to do that. So I'm very excited to be back, but I will be taking it pretty easy. I definitely want to, follow the advice and be cautious. I don't necessarily have anything to rush back for. So I think the main priority is just getting back really healthy. And then 2025 is going to be the year of the comeback. So that is the goal. Definitely be doing another marathon, hopefully in spring. And hopefully will redeem myself from this year. But I love a challenge, and it will be just, another one to come back stronger.
Well, I can't wait to follow the comeback. We are very proud of you, and I hope you are too, and you will always be an Olympian. Thanks for joining us for 5 Miles Easy.
See you next time.